Hey everybody, it's a Mad Master here. I'm doing a video today. And today I wanted to do a video comparing and contrasting two different poles of politics. I don't really consider it poles of politics, but basically two different formulations politically that I think should be compared and contrasted, because I wouldn't say they're the polar opposite of each other at all, but they are very much at odds in some ways. Now, in some ways they're not at odds, and the odds are exaggerated by politicians because they're trying to sell a product called, their politics, their personal politics that they're trying to do. So, and that is the two conflicting ideas of neoliberal globalism and Christian nationalist far-right, whatever, fascism, whatever you want to call it. And this has kind of come up in a lot of conversations lately with me, because I'm very conflicted myself, because I do not like the Republican right-wing Christian conservative thing. It's been a lifelong enemy of the things that I enjoy. Starting in the 80s with Satanic Panic and, heavy metal music and Dungeons and Dragons and all that, And also, I'm pro-choice, and I partake into the occult. So I probably am scary to a lot of people, talking about that. I like a lot of stuff that's very occultic. That's why I watch Hexenhammer, because he's kind of like he's very much into socially, he's very much into the stuff that is anathema to the Christian conservatives, even though he supports some of these people nowadays, which is kind of unfortunate, because we got to get out. I think it's probably because of what I'm going to be talking about in this video. Now, on the other end, we have this, and I would, when people talk about leftoids, or when people talk about left-wingers or leftists, now I think that's something different than what I'm talking about. Now, it's sometimes a little more subtle than people talk about it, or can give it as far as what people are talking about, but it's basically this essence of this global conglomerate of elites that influence politicians, like the World Economic Forum, young leaders, which ironically enough, Tulsi Gabbard is one of them. And, these different types of bureaucracies that are formed, and the people that support them. Now, the modern day liberal, basically the point that we could talk about like a trajectory and a certain delineated point in history where this became more of what the liberal, I'm not talking about leftists, I'm talking about liberal, became, liberalism became this modern day American liberalism. Now, I'm not talking about liberal economics either. I'm talking about, well, actually I am, because that's where I'm going to come. They come together at a certain point. So there is this, there's these neoliberals, right? The Clintonites, the Blair people, they believe in free trade and, all sorts of these world organizations that do not always have our best interests at hand, or in mind, I should say. And then you have their somewhat social centrist liberalism that they had, Clinton or Blair, they weren't like Christian conservatives or anything like that, but, you'd have these ideas that, abortion should be safe, legal, and rare, like Clinton said, which is actually a pretty good rhetoric. Stuff like that, And then there's a seeping influence of the left on these people, but it's kind of like, it's very partial and kind of just like, it's very much like you'll throw in some kind of thing that's left-wing, ostensibly, to try to appeal to more left to center people. And it's usually very transparent, just like what Biden's doing right now, So this class of billionaires and, global conglomerates and elites and big tech is also, so I was talking about the delineation point, I'm sorry. The delineation point is basically Trump's election and Brexit, because those two things, when people attacked, especially Trump, there's something that happened to liberalism in general. They became very tolerant of very abhorrent ideas for whatever reason, because it was against Trump. And it kind of gave carte blanche to some of these groups. Like, I have David Frum, who says, he was a big Bush guy, George W. Bush, and neocon. He supports the Bidens of the world now and all this stuff. And a lot of these people are following, just like, well, when Obama followed much of Bush Jr.'s foreign policy, that's really one of the breaking points too that happened. So you have this neoliberalism mixed with a little bit of, pepperings of leftism once in a while. You'll have at least lip service to it, but that's always been the Democratic Party's game, where they, gave some crumbs to the people that were supporting these things, but really didn't implement them fully. They couldn't go too far off the map because, then that dangerous Bernie kind of stuff would come about. So you had that, and so the choice is, and then you have this other side. So right-wing populism, really, is it really populism? I don't know. That's a big question. Trumpism, MAGA, the MAGA thing. And there's an undercurrent of anti-elitism. The left has argued it's anti-intellectualism, but I don't know if it's that at this point. Anti-elitism, I mean, you could say it's anti-intellectualism, but, ironically, the last 2 years, it's been a small number of intellectuals that have been attacking a lot of what's happened. And then they get shunned and castigated as not being part of the science or whatever, even though they were proven right time and time again, as we see now. Not going to talk about that whole thing in this video, but it definitely plays a role, because what has happened is, and regardless of what you think about the measures or the the mandates or whatever, what has happened is these groups got more powerful, these big global conglomerates. I mean, the biggest upward transfer of wealth in history happened because of the CARES Act in America. Biggest upward transfer of wealth, and people got crumbs, And so we got to ask these questions. Are these two different opposing sides? You have the globalists who want these huge government corporate entities, basically fascism, in so many words, or at least corporatism. What Mussolini and these cartels, these ideas were formulated as far as corporatism. What maybe it's just an interpretation of what the original writing said, but what it's a slang way of wording it is basically corporatism, or what they called fascism, I'll just say. And then you have this other side that are basically, they take away, so this whole left part of the spectrum that I'm talking about wants worldwide things to be in place, and worldwide organizations of people and conglomerates, and worldwide, it's overarching around the world, like the World Economic Forum, all these, the WTO, these things that are worldwide. They're not just some localized, decentralized thing. They're also more centralized in a lot of ways too. And then you have this other side, which is these Christian nationalists. They want, I mean, ostensibly they do support bringing back jobs to the United States. At least that's their rhetoric. It's kind of, Trump and MAGA, the rhetoric is the rhetoric and deliverance of the promises that they said is very much a lot like liberalism's or the Democratic Party's deliverance of their crumbs. They give these crumbs. Oh, we brought back 200 jobs in the Midwest. Oh, that's not really that much, but it's better than what the Democrats would do. Oh, it's kind of the same thing. It's just the flip side of that. It's like, oh, at least we did, at least you had a healthcare exchange instead of Medicare for all. I mean, why couldn't you go for that? Of course, but it's kind of the same type of thing. The smattering of crumbs that they give. So, in a lot of ways, the MAGA things like. In some ways, it's like the 90s Democrats or 80s Democrats, So, at least in how they deliver their promises as far as the population goes. But anyways, at its core, what is a bigger threat to humanity and our livelihood and our freedoms? And this is going to be very controversial, because I think overall, the globalists are way more insidiously scary as a threat to humanity than the MAGA Christian nationalists. And this is going to be a very controversial point. Now, this is just kind of what I've come up with. And this is why I think these localized Christian nationalist MAGA people, right? It's more localized. It's more like, well, it's in the United States, it's okay. We got to fight, it's kind of like the fight that already happened, because people fought for their rights. You had gay marriage like passed into law and all this stuff that took decades of work of people fighting for that, and all sorts of stuff, or even the pot decriminalization that's happening, stuff like that. So a lot of who was against that was the right-wing conservative Christian kind of types of people, that Christian, call them Christian nationalists or whatever. They actually were more internationalists, like the neocons and stuff were obviously more internationalists, which is interesting. But, that type of person, that type of archetype versus the globalist worldwide, organizations that are unaccountable to democratic vote or unaccountable to the people, because you have, people like Klaus Schwab or whoever, these unelected, or even with the health stuff, the unelected bureaucracies controlling the population. Like the last 2 years, you had the health commissioner who's been in power for a certain person who's been in his place for 40 years, made a lot of the decisions, or at least tried to push the government to do certain things that nobody was voted for it. And maybe people would have voted for it. That's fine. I'm just saying that there was no the people were not in charge. The people, there's nothing that was voted on as far as any of the stuff that happened. So that's what I'm trying to say. So I think it's more dangerous, these worldwide organizations, these globalists, these corporate entities that are, intertwined with these government entities, with these NGOs or whatever they are, these organizations, like all sorts of the Bilderbergs, these different groups that meet together of these elites. They're a lot more dangerous than the Christian nationalists. Now, does that mean that, and I think what I'm trying to say is the Democratic Party, not the whole thing, okay, not the entire thing. I mean, I don't think necessarily Ilhan Omar is going to go meet with Klaus Schwab anytime soon, because they probably disagree on a lot of stuff about capitalism, for one, because it's still very capitalist. It's a very different type of capitalism, but it's still very much about these billionaires wanting to, make their money and all that. So for anybody to call a communist is very, very misguided. So, or a leftist or whatever, because it's not. Now, that doesn't mean that Marxism or communism is anything good. I'm not saying that, but, or at least like Marxist-Leninism is not anything good. But as far as like the whole overarching concept of these global groups and they're way more entertained, at least, by the Democratic Party at this point in time. They're very much, or by neocons in the Republican Party, you know, not the Trump people. The Trump people are a lot of them are very opposed to that. And more libertarian kind of Trump people, especially, are very opposed to it. Like, you know, if you count Rand Paul and the like, and as such. So there was one politician, I can't remember, it was a Republican. It was like, I agreed with like 60 or 50% of what he believed. Like, it was very much like Rand Paul. He was against all these types of war kind of things and stuff like that, and was very surprised. I think Scott Adams was talking about him one time, and I can't remember who he was, but there are these people in there. So, and that never would have happened like 30 years ago. Like, you had Ron Paul, and that was it. But now you have, like, you know, maybe like 5 or 6 Ron Pauls in there, Rand Pauls or whatever. And some of them have different varying ideas on the spectrum of things. So I think overall, the real reason why the Christian Christofascist, Republican nutjob, whatever you want to call them, you know, people on the left will call them that, those types of people, the reason why I think they're less of a threat than the globalists and the people that empower the globalists, which I do believe is a real thing, is because they're easier to fight. Because it's already been done. We've already done it in the past. We've already fought we haven't fought these huge global conglomerates of these people that are on the top of the billionaires that are controlling everything, big tech included and stuff like that. Now, we haven't fought those people before. It's a different fight. Look at the truckers. You know, if you want to say that Trudeau's, let's just say, for all intents and purposes, Trudeau is a globalist, okay? The trucker protest was the only way to really fight a lot what was going on in Canada at the time. And let's say more stuff like that comes and it's all bullshit. I'm going to do more videos about teetering on the cliff of acceptability on YouTube, of course, about what I think about the modern climate things that are going on. Now, I'm just going to say as a disclaimer there, I support public, you know, major funding of public transportation, like bullet trains. You know, I don't know why we don't have like a train that goes from, like, in the Midwest, like goes to Chicago, Milwaukee, and Madison, you know, Cedar Rapids to Minneapolis, like within, you know, 3 hours or something like that, with a bullet train or something like that. That's the kind of stuff that I get excited about. I don't get excited about electric cars because I think that is a, you know, partly at least a scam. Someone's making money from that. That's why they're pushing that whole thing. But I should do a separate video about that anytime. There's plenty of videos on YouTube about this. So in a way, I agree with the right wingers when they attack the stupid fucking electric vehicle thing. Like, it's just like, why not push for public transportation first and then let people do, you know, what they want with cars, but have enough alternatives to cars. So if people choose to do that, it'll be more of an appealing choice, especially like big cities and stuff. Like, oh, well, I could drive my car and traffic's so bad anyways. I'm just going to take the rail, you know, the light rail or whatever. Like Jesse Ventura did that in Minneapolis, by the way. The light rail thing. So yeah, I think that they're more of a threat because, as far as the globalists, more of a threat than Christian nationalists, Christian fascists, whatever people want to call, on the left call them, you know. I think they're more of a threat because they have more power. They have more technical expertise. I mean, look at Truth Social. I'm half joking, but it's true. Like, other than like maybe Peter Thiel a lot. Peter Thiel's a weird case because is he a globalist? I mean, he's a billionaire who's, you know, funding all this stuff, but it's like, what is he, you know? But like, or Peter Thiel, I think that's how you pronounce it actually. But yeah, I think they're more of a threat. You know, I think they are way more of a threat because, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to vote all Republican this fall or anything like that. But I think to push that tide away, I think that actually, at least on some superficial or maybe more level, the right wing right now are the ones that are not at the vanguard, but definitely at that table of trying to push that back, push globalism back. And 20 years ago, it was Democrat. It was people that would have identified, maybe not been Democrats or Green Party people 25 years ago, because that's who were in the, the majority of that was leftists who were pushing against a lot of that. That's the truth. That's just how it went. These people, they were probably not giving their kids the shot, all their shots that they should get. They were eating organic food. They were trying to buy locally, all that stuff. I'm not saying that they wouldn't give their kids any shots. I'm just saying like that was more aligned with the left at that point in time. It definitely was. And now they flipped. That poll did flip. A lot of that stuff I just mentioned did flip to some extent. Now they're talking about seed oils. It's a right-wing meme, seed oils. It's like, well, 20 years ago, it would not have been right-wing talking about seed oils. It would have been left-wing things. So a lot of things have switched, have flipped. I don't know if they're going to continue to flip. They haven't flipped enough for my tastes to be like, to make me want to vote. I'll just say that. But if Rand Paul ran, I'd probably vote for him. But it's like, especially if it ran against some kind of neoliberal or whatever. So that's kind of the conclusion of what I'm trying to say. I think as far as our sovereignty as a nation, as far as our individual sovereignty, as we've seen in the last 2 years. Now, this is going to sound a little base. I'm not going to say based, but I guess, it's all a question of choices. Now, if birth control got banned, like I said, I'd probably arm myself to, and I don't know what I would do. I'm just saying, if actual birth control got banned. Now, with abortion, this is going to sound a little crude. Would you rather have to be tracked everywhere and everything you said be held against you? Like if you said something against the government or against certain organizations, be marked for disinformation and have your bank account pulled? Would you rather have that with like some digital currency? Would you rather have that or not be able to nut in some women a couple times or as much as you do without birth control or a condom or whatever, because abortion's banned? It's a really weird dilemma. It's a really bad dilemma to think about these two things. I mean, I know it's really gross, but I'm just saying it's basically the truth. Is that which one's worse? It's like a devil's bargain, whatever, the coin, two sides of a terrible coin, but I would say like with regards to like abortion stuff like that, it's easier to fight that. They have the right wing they have billions of dollars behind them, right? But these people are not as powerful as people in the WEF or these big tech companies. They have made the most money out of anybody. Who are the richest people right now? I mean, Elon Musk, kind of a controlled opposition in a way, but like there are the big tech overlords, as you might want to call them. And those types of people are the richest people. The billionaires that are in these organizations are the most powerful people. Focus on the family, or James Dobson doesn't have probably 1,000th of the money that Klaus Schwab has. Now, of course, he's a jackass. Of course, those people are fucking nuts and should be fought. But what I'm trying to say is that would be a temporary thing. Like, oh, okay, we'll get a vote. Okay, they're not going to get elected. Or these Republicans or they're losing out in this election because this other guy is more pro-choice. Oh, okay, that's easy. Like that's a local thing, or it's like a statewide thing, because obviously the Supreme Court makes it more by the state now because of the Roe versus Wade being overturned. Now, isn't that easier than some big global organization influencing the government to keep everybody tracked with digital currency that they can take away at any time? Eat the bugs, live in a pod. That stuff scares me more than not be able to nut as much. Okay, I'm just being honest. This is kind of a comedic take on it, but obviously, people like to have sex. People like to have control over their body. I know that. And then obviously the hypocrisy of the people that supported all those mandates in the past year, especially the past year and a half. And then they're like, oh, they're taking away a person's autonomy. Oh, where have I heard that? And obviously the other side's hypocrites too. But Overall, that scares the living shit out of me way more than abortion being banned or having to like, because it was kind of like a give and take between the right wing and the left wing in America in the 80s and 90s with these forces that were around, because you had, you like, let's say you had like Jello Biafra, the Dead Kennedys. I had Frankenchrist. The album cover was all controversy. The police came to his record, his came to his record company that he owned and stuff, and he took away all the records and tried to get him banned and stuff. It's like he fought him in court. It was a battle. It was a real back and forth between the two sides. But how the hell do you have that with global, worldwide organizations? I mean, obviously it can be done, Obviously, if you count what happened in where was it, Bangladesh, or I'm trying to remember, where or I think it was Bangladesh, but like recently, like whatever, I forgot which country it was, but where they just, they had enough, and the people took over. Obviously that kind of stuff can happen too, but it's way more threatening to have the globalists in control of things, in my opinion. It's way more threatening for our freedom and our sovereignty as human beings. I don't know what they want ultimately. I'm gonna say, I'm not gonna agree with all conspiracy people and say they want to kill off all this number of people and all this crap. I don't know. They probably want a lot of different things at different times. They probably all argue amongst each other. But overall, the overarching threat that they have against our rights and our sovereignty as human beings, I think, is way more evil in a certain way than Christian Christofascists. That's my point of this video. I don't think that, and that's just because they're easy. Those other people are easier to fight, because that is way easier to fight, because we've already fought. We've already done it in the past. We've already done it. We've already had these battles through the 70s, 80s and 90s, especially, and through the 2000s too. So we've already had these battles. Just think about all the stuff that happened, with all this stuff. We've already had these fights. We already have these battles have been already won to some extent up until recently. Now, those battles, they're not being fought in the best way. You have some guy on the East Coast that basically says you can have an abortion up to the day they're born or whatever, or something that was taken out of context, I think. But, you don't have like people pushing back on that. You don't have the Clinton kind of people saying safe, legal, and rare anymore, which is a better way to communicate that kind of stuff. And then you have all this crazy shit with the drag shows with kids and stuff. It doesn't make the left look good. But another thing about the globalists, though, is that they take away all the labor stuff from leftism and just leave the identity politics in there. That's what woke corporatism is. Because if you really want to have left wing, to me, is the economic ideas of the people having basically sovereignty over their work conditions. That's what unions are ideally are supposed to work like that. I'm just saying. That's how the left, or at least the American non-communist left, I should say like Stalinist left were for 100 years or whatever. So, but yeah, that's kind of the conclusion I've had. I feel like they're more of a threat now. It doesn't mean they'll always be as more of a threat, but that's why you have to get people that are populist in the Democratic Party too, and you can't have them sell out like they did, like Bernie did and stuff. Like, you have to have more people like that. You have to have more people that believe that America should have sovereignty in trade deals, and which is kind of what Bernie's thing used to be about. You have to have like belief in cutting foreign, the foreign policy thing. You have to have more bravery in going against the military industrial complex again, like they used to. Of course, under Bush, that was totally the Democrats' thing for a while. Things like that. You have to have more like Dennis Kucinich's, who who actually never really did sell out like Bernie did. Dennis Kucinich's, Ron Paul on the other side. That's what you have to have. You have to have more of those types of people in both parties. And otherwise, I don't think, I think it's a danger. We're living in a dangerous time. But I am not as scared of the Christian, because, you think about, it's kind of a contrast between, like, let's say Bill Gates and, like, the My Pillow dude, it's like, I mean, one's just a crazy jackass, but he doesn't have as much money as Bill Gates. But the other guy is more methodical and I think they're more methodical and more dangerous. The globalists is my point. So that's what I'm trying to say. And I think the right-wing Christian conservative people are just they're more loony, more easy to make fun of, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and stuff. But some of them make a good point once in a while. They do. They really do. And we have to, when they make a good point, go ahead and support them. When they say something good, they say something relevant, that's what you got to do. So you got to empower the ideas that are actually good and disempower the ideas that are bad. That's what you have to do with any politician. Just don't support don't support any politicians. Just go by their ideas alone. That's what you should do. So that's about all.